Hey y'all, so this is my very first Funko Pop custom to do on the channel. I hope you guys are going to enjoy it. So we're going to take Eugene's head here from the Walking Dead series and Superman's body, minus the cape, and turn it into Captain Planet from Captain Planet and the Planeteers. So when you're working with vinyl or plastic, the best way to manipulate it is to heat it up, obviously. So when you want to remove a Funko Pop head, you need to submerge it in water from the neck down, at least. So a lot of people will tell you need boiling water to do this. You don't. You need steaming water. Now, the hotter the water is, the faster it'll work, obviously, but there's no need for you to try to, scorch yourself while you're doing this. I use tongs to kind of hold it down a little bit so I don't burn my hands and to just make sure it's completely submerged. After a few minutes, you can take the pop out of the water. Please use towels or something so you don't burn your hand. And I know I didn't get it anywhere close to in the frame when I was doing this, but basically you're just trying to yank the head from the body. Now I did a mistake here. So you'll see that I call it the neck peg is still in the pop head. That's the little round thing that connects the neck to the base or the body. They're easier to switch when that's out because sometimes the little peg that comes out of the body are different sizes, and this was the case with Eugene and Superman. So what I had to do, I used two separate pairs of pliers to try to pry it out. Now, if I left the head submerged longer in a hotter temperature, I probably would have been able to pull it out this way, but I just couldn't at the temperature it was now, not for lack of trying, obviously, but I couldn't. So I did try to soak it for a little bit longer, but yeah, that didn't work. So eventually I just decided to switch to Superman and come back to Eugene later. Now, Clark here, you'll see, was a lot more cooperative than the Walking Dead dude. I'm not a fan of the Walking Dead, so I've never watched it, so I have no idea who Eugene is. But anyway, the entire net peg came out, the little round thing did come out with it, so I didn't have to worry about that, but I did have to worry about getting the cape off there, because Captain Planet doesn't have a cape. And as you can kind of see there in the corner, the legs actually came off the body while I was doing that. I didn't mean to take the legs off, but yeah, it happened. Wasn't that hard to put back though, you'll see that later. So I've taken off capes before on Pops, and yeah, it was hot. I've taken off Batgirl's cape before when I did my Batwoman one, so I could paint it separately. It only had two little notches in the shoulders where the cape attached. This one was actually connected throughout the back of it. So it was a little bit harder to get off, but with enough yanking, I got it. You saw me put Eugene's head back in there, and that's why I was talking about I tried to reheat it. It still didn't work. I don't know how well you can tell here because it's definitely not in frame, but I'm trying to poke out the neck circle peg thing, whatever you want to call it, connector, I guess you could call it, out a little bit just so I'll have a line to follow with my X-Acto knife. Again, totally out of frame. I am such a professional when it comes to camera angles. But yeah, eventually I just had to slice it out, and I just, went along the seam. Not that hard, honestly, especially when it was still hot. But you'd rather go ahead and have, just a clean pull, just pull it out from the glue. That way you don't have to worry about accidentally snapping a piece off or cutting a piece that you don't want to cut off. But if you're careful, it'll work. So the more blank a canvas is, obviously, the easier it is to paint on. So you need 100% pure acetone. You can use nail polish remover that has acetone in it that's not 100%. It's just going to take you a lot longer to do, and Honestly, this is the best way I've found to do it. Just take some acetone and lightly rub it on the pop. It will not hurt the vinyl at all. Some plastics it will hurt, but the vinyl and plastic that Funko uses, nah, you're gonna be perfectly fine using this stuff. You can see I'm wearing gloves, and that's mainly because if the paint gets onto you, you can't, and yeah, I remembered, this stuff is fumey. I have to wear a mask while I was doing it. I totally forgot to put on my mask before doing the acetone, but yeah. Acetone is very, very fumey. Sorry if you just heard someone sneeze. It's very, very fumey, and it can really, cause you headaches, obviously. So don't be stupid like me and put your mask on prior to doing this. But if you get the paint on your hands, like if you transfer it from the pop to your hands, it won't be able to wash off with soap and water, only with the acetone. Also, the more acetone you get on the hands, the drier it becomes. So the reason I was like twirling it around like that, or like, should I take off the eyes and the eyebrows or leave it there? I've decided to leave it there to kind of use it as a guide for when I did the eyebrows and the eyes later on. So it took quite a bit of scrubbing to get both the head and the body clean. But with enough patience and paper towels, you can do it. Real quick, I just wanted to show you guys that since the legs, came apart from the torso anyway, I decided to take the acetone off with them still apart, just so I could easier get into all the little nooks and crannies. So if you're someone who really wants to get every single bit of paint off, the more you can disassemble your pop, the better. With me, I just try to get as much off as possible, and you'll see later that I was mostly successful. A lot of custom artists will tell you to wash the pops or any kind of plastic vinyl in warm soapy water to get all the remaining acetone off. I just did this to show you guys. Personally, I've never had a problem with not washing it and the paint sticking, but yeah, that's an option. Looking back, it probably would have been easier to paint the pop with the torso and legs separate as well. But I wasn't really sure how to keep the torso up without having to risk it falling. I could have used the same method I used with the head, which is sticking it on a wooden pike and putting it into some styrofoam. But I was afraid it would just wobble off if I hit the table and, my paint would be ruined. So I just went ahead and glued it back before I started painting. I don't know why I grabbed the white because I did not use it, but the other colors are the colors that I used for the painting of this pop. So this stuff is called sugru, and as you can see from the label, it's moldable glue. You can buy it on Amazon in different colors. I always just get the white. It comes in black, brown, and primary colors, as well as some other random colors, I believe, and they're all in these little bitty packets. And basically, it's an alternative to air dry clay or epoxy sculpt, other stuff like that. Usually the bigger customizers, the people who do this professionally, use epoxy sculpt because it's really, really durable. It makes it look a lot more professional. Amateurs honestly use air dry clay because it's cheap, it's lightweight, and it's just easy to work with. But it's also, it cracks when it dries, and it shrinks when it dries, so it's not really the best. And then there's also polymer clay, but it doesn't really work out when you're using plastic a lot of the time, because obviously you have to bake that, and if you get plastic too hot, it's gonna melt. So I use this stuff. Basically, it's an air dry rubber. It does take 24 hours to harden, sort of. It'll always be a little bit bendy because, again, it is rubber. But again, it takes 24 hours to fully cure. After that, though, it adheres to what it's on. That's why it's called a glue. It's actually meant for like household repairs, so like if a wire breaks, or you know, you can patch it up with that or something like that. But I found it's really, really good to sculpt with. After it's cured, it's easy to carve away. So that's what I use whenever I'm working on my Funko Pops or my unicorns or whatever. I used the sugru to fill in the gaps left by Superman's cape in the back. I didn't do that good of a job. I suck when it comes to smoothing in the clay. I'm just really, really bad at it. I was even worse with the hair. Captain Planet has a little bit of swoop on his hair, kind of like Superman does, but not really. And I tried to recreate that with Sugru too, and yeah, the end result, it looks better, but it's still not the best, but yeah. So I used my X-Acto knife and clay sculpting tools to try and get it as perfect as possible. So real quick, here's me just taking a little bit of the Suguru and trying to blend it in and smooth it in with the rest of the hair as good as possible. I was just trying to get the general shape of the swoop. You'll see a side-by-side comparison here in a minute. Obviously I didn't like that way, so I had to get more. You'll see a side-by-side comparison of what it looked like without the shaving of it down after it was cured and what it looked afterwards. Because I didn't feel like filming that part apparently, because I totally forgot. But it is easy to cure. I mean, it is easy to carve away once you're done with it. So if you can get a general shape while it's still wet and want to save the rest for after it's cured, it's very, very possible. Also, this stuff does not keep. That's something you're going to have to keep in mind if you use this stuff. Like I said, Suguru always comes in those little bitty packets. And if you don't use the entire packet, and the rest of the Suguru is pretty much going to go to waste, because I've tried putting it in a Ziploc before, did not work. It was still like a rubber ball afterwards. So I didn't show it on film again, but what I do, I take the Suguru and I flatten it out as much as I can, and I put it against something plastic like a Tupperware, and I let it cure. You can peel it off of the plastic afterwards. It'll adhere to it if you actually just wanted to keep it that way and didn't touch it, but it's also pretty easy to peel away, and then that way you can cut into it and carve away to it later. So if you needed like a heart shape, say, you can take that leftover Suguru that's cured and just cut a heart in it. So it's basically like cutting something out of clay that's already cured. So it's actually really easy. You can see I'm using a toothpick to kind of try to roll it out a little bit more and get it a little bit more smooth, because I know my X-Acto knife wouldn't really be good for smoothing, so I tried to do the best with that, but I guess it was okay. So I forgot to take these pictures before I put the paint on there, so excuse the time lapse. But you can see from the first one, it was a bit more bulkier and the tip wasn't as pointy, so that's all I did pretty much. I honestly think it kind of looked better before, but I wanted that tip to be really distinguished, so yeah. So, completely off topic, but what do you guys think of that little Halloween skull in the background that I was using for my resin? The background here is going to change a lot, and you're just going to see a whole bunch of random stuff because my desk is literally the most cluttered thing ever. But yeah, I was going to sell some of those during Christmas time, but my PayPal decided to stop working on me. In fact, it's never really worked when it comes to receiving payments. So yeah, if anyone knows how to like really work that, please message me on Instagram so I can figure it out. But anyway, after the 24 hours has passed and you've done any kind of changes you want to the pop, I actually didn't carve. I said I forgot, but looking back at this footage now, I totally forgot to carve it away at all before I put that paint on there, so yeah. Totally forgot. Anyway, after it's all fully cured, you can go ahead and start painting. Now, one thing with the Suguru, sometimes the paint doesn't stick as well to it, so that's just something to keep in mind if you want to use this stuff. If you drop it, chances are it will chip. With the varnish I put on it, it still chips. But when you're using acrylic paints, professionally, you should water down the paint and put a whole bunch of thin coats on instead of a couple thick ones. That way your paint strokes won't show up. If you're doing this for fun and entertainment and you don't have the patience to wait that long, just use the pure paint like I do. So a little bit of a jump here. I'm trying to go as best I can around the eyes and the eyebrows. I don't really care if I cover it up a little bit because I just need the general shape to go by later. Eventually I did switch to a smaller brush to do that, so yeah, like right there. So you really just need to take your time if it's something that you're going to be using later. Even with the pop eyes, after you've put so many coats on there, it's kind of hard to tell where the bulge of those eyes start. So that better you can go delicately around those eyes and eyebrows, I guess you can say, or anything you want to keep the general shape of. Just try and take your time and be really easy with it. And after the first coat of the head is put on there, you can start on the body. So I'm pretty much just going around in any part where Cap has flesh showing. I'm painting it that same blue color as the face. I'm using my angled brush here. Those kind of brushes are more expensive. I found mine at Hobby Lobby. I can't remember exactly how much it was. If I can remember to look it up, I'll insert it here. But they are more expensive than your regular brushes. But if you're going to be doing a lot of these small figures or anything, they're kind of worth it because it's better to get into all those little nooks and crannies, like around the arms and the legs. And also it's a smaller detailed brush, so it's just easier to get in those little fine lines. After about 3 coats of the blue for his skin, I moved on to the hair. Now, I'm using this dark green, you can see. So I used to watch this when I was a kid. I really loved it. And I always used to wonder, why is Captain Planet blue and green? It literally was not until I sat down to start painting this thing that I was like, oh wait, that's the color of the earth. Man, that Arkansas education is really kicking in, ain't it? I am so stupid. But anyway, you can see all those little dark spots where the original hair color was. If you want to take your time with the acetone and take away all those little dark spots and make it completely blank, or at least blanker, you don't have to use as much paint. I did have to use more coats of the green to completely cover up those patches of dark brown. So you really need to ask yourself, like, which do you value more, your paint or your patience? For me, I guess it's my patience, because I just didn't want to sit there all day and take acetone to that thing. So I just decided to put more paint on it. But you do have to put more paint if you have a darker thing. That's why you have to use the acetone in the first place. So this one, it actually took me probably about 4 to 5 coats altogether. So if you guys do this, clean your caps off while you're using it so you don't have to take a pair of pliers just to open the bottle. But, so, the plastic they used for the Superman body was already red, but I went ahead and painted over it anyway. Just to make the color more even and consistent. You can also see that it's really dark red compared to the red on Cap's boots that you can kind of see there at the edge of the screen a little bit, because I was using it for reference. Honestly, I had to use more layers of the red than anything else. Part of it is just because my red paint is so old that it's actually become more liquidy. Some paints tend to become chunkier with age, others more liquid. And for my red, it became more liquid. So I had to put on a whole bunch of thin layers, like I said, about watering your color down. So you don't really see too many paint strokes on the red part, but it took a long time. It took longer than it did for the hair. So yeah, be conscious of that, of the quality of your paint, I guess, before you start in. But you can see I'm using the angled brush again just to try and get every little nook and cranny I can around the gloves, the boots, and the bottom half of his outfit. Am I aware that I'm doing this completely out of order and editing it in that same order? Yes, I am. So I'm just putting this together in the order that I painted it. So yeah, I go back between the head and the body. So I take that same green that I used for the hair, obviously, and I take my smallest tip brush, which that's actually a generic brand. I can't remember the name of it, but I found it at Walmart in a pack, and it's obviously, honestly, one of the best brushes I have. Those brushes with the triangle tip or the triangle shaped handles and the colored tips are actually some of the best paint brushes I have, which is weird. It goes to show, not the price tag doesn't always equal quality. But just try to take your time with these smaller details, obviously. If you wanted to use a toothpick or a dotting tool, that would work too. You pretty much just put larger amounts of paint on there at a time instead of just a small amount like I'm doing with the paintbrush. Just take your time and try to follow the map, I guess you could say, that the older paint left for you. While the eyebrows are drying, I go ahead and get my little sponge tips out. I buy these at Hobby Lobby. I have honestly no idea what they're called. I always have to look at the package, and I don't have the packaging on me right now. But basically, it's almost like a little plastic stick with flocking on the end of it. You know, I say it's a sponge tip. It's not. It's actually just like fuzz and cotton or something. I don't know. But it's really good for detail work. You can put a lot of paint, way more than you can with a toothpick or a dotting tool, on a certain spot at once. So that's what I use to go around the edges and clean up any type of errors that I made. Like, you know, obviously what I'm doing now is going around everywhere where I got a little bit out of the line when it came to the green paint, and just making it more smooth and honestly just make it look better. And it takes a lot less layers to do it with one of these things than it would a paintbrush. So after I put down the blue paint to correct the edges, I take my black paint, which by the way is a lot more liquidy than my red paint, but it's black so it still covers pretty evenly. Black and white are pretty good like that, so yeah. Even though my white paint became chunky over time and that one's a little bit less satisfying than the black. Anyway, I'm taking that finer tipped brush again and just doing my best to follow the imprint of the pop eyes. Obviously, they bulge out from the rest of the surface of the pop, but when you've got so many paint layers on it, it's kind of hard to tell where those bumps are. So yeah, definitely take your time, and even if you wanted to trace out with a pencil, that would have been a lot more smarter, but we've already clarified, I'm not that bright. So just take your time and do the best you can. So that orange bottle is not medicine, it is glue. It is a matte finish glue Mod Podge mixed with water. And I use that to seal in the paint so that it's less likely to chip. I usually put 3 coats. For this one I only put 2 because I forgot to put the last one on. But you have to mix it with water to make it more matte-like. Honestly, mine needs more water in the mixture to make it more matte. You usually put about 2 spoonfuls of water for every 1 spoonful of glue, or at least that's how I measure it. And pretty much the more water you add, the more matte it'll be, pretty much. Now, if you wanted to have a glossier finish, just put it on straight. But I like it to have at least a little bit more matte to it, so it'll look more like an actual pop. But like I said, this is still a little bit too glossy for me, so when this runs out, I need to like experiment with the different measurements. But yeah, that's what I use to seal in my work. So the upper half of Captain Planet's outfit is a little weird. It's just like the very top of his chest and his sleeves, and that's about it, like the very top of his sleeves, and then it just stops. So with a pencil, I trace out roughly the design where I want the top of the outfit. I don't even know what you would call that thing, but I roughly sketch out where I want it to go, where I want the Planeteers logo to go in the front before I started painting. So after it's all sketched out, I go for the red paint, and yes, I did have to use the pliers again to open the bottle. I take my angled brush again and paint around the outline as best I could. Yeah, it's hard to maintain the exact tracing of the lines with paint because you're always going to go over it, you're always going to smudge it a little bit, and that's why I'm kind of going in between two paintbrushes here. I'm trying to follow the lines with the thinner paintbrush and then cover it back up with cover the majority of it up with the angled brush. So yeah, again, this takes a lot of patience, honestly, to paint smaller details like for pops and other figures. So if you don't have patience, maybe this isn't the hobby for you, but you definitely need to take your time throughout the entire process. As soon as I finished putting the first coat of that red for the top half of his outfit on, I immediately started working on the belt. Now the belt only took about 2 coats to put on because, black pretty much covers pretty solidly. There was only a couple spots where I had to go back in and touch it up. The red is so thin, and since red is not a color that covers very easily, I had to put about 4 to 5 coats of it. You can kind of see there that the edges of the outfit, the top half of it, aren't very clean, so I did go in with a toothpick later on and touch it up. I didn't film that part, but here I am putting on the belt buckle. Cap's belt is actually more like, I think, a hexagon kind of shape, but I didn't want to bother sculpting a new one and cutting this one off, so yeah, he's got now a round belt buckle. So I used this color that is, brilliantly just labeled as yellow, instead of like a really fancy color. This one's just yellow, for the belt buckle. Then with my dotting tool, I go in and make the circle for Cap's logo that's going to be in the center of his chest. A dotting tool, if you see it in a packaging, it'll be labeled as a stylus. I don't know why everyone calls them dotting tools, because they're mainly used for making perfect circles on your paint jobs or on whatever you're painting. So obviously when you're making a bigger one like this, it's not going to be perfect, but it is going to be a lot easier to maintain a circular shape with these things than it would be a paintbrush. After the black dried, I went in with the same tool with the yellow paint, the same color I used for the belt buckle, and repeated the process, leaving a black outline around the logo. After the yellow dried, I went in with a toothpick, so I would have like the smallest tip possible to work with, and I draw the globe lines on Cap's logo. So I think it was 3 down the middle, and then 3 across, to make it look more like the globe. Off camera, I put on 2 more layers of Mod Podge for the body, and then after all that's dried, it's time to reattach the head. So I take this Gorilla Glue, which is like one of the strongest super glues on the market, and paint all the way around the neck connector thing, whatever. Before I did this, I did put it back in the head just to make sure it fit. I did this at the beginning too. I just like to do it after all the paint is on there, just to make sure I didn't put too many layers of paint on there. And then just shove it back in the hole. That sounds wrong. But shove it back in there and it'll be good to go. So that is my custom of Captain Planet. So with the sugru in there, if you just sat down to do it, it wouldn't take you more than 2 days. If you did something else other than the sugru, it would probably take you about a day. For me, since I actually do stuff in between painting this thing, it took me like, I don't know, 3 or 4 days to do it, so not that bad. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this custom. There will be more, custom crafty stuff later on. I don't do Funko Pop customs often, just whenever I get a good idea to, so yeah, there may be several to come in the future, there may be a few, but you never know. If you guys have any ideas that you would like me to maybe try to figure out how to do, I'm open for suggestions. I truly am. I'm not going to guarantee that I can do them, but I'll say I'll definitely consider it. So anyway, guys, thanks again for watching. Remember, it's a community, not a competition. And I'll see you guys later. Bye.